Welcome and thank you all for joining us on another Sales Hacker webinar. My name is Scott Barker, Head of Partnerships at Sales Hacker. I want to wish everyone a happy holidays. This is actually going to be the last webinar of 2018, which is pretty crazy. I think we've done over 75 webinars this year with almost 100,000 listeners. So it's been a wild year. Excited for what we have planned for you all next year. But today, we're talking about sales velocity and the number one secret sales leaders overlook to close deals faster. And we're deep in the final innings of Q4, so we could all use a little bit of help, speeding up some of our deals. And before I introduce my two awesome guests that are joining me today, quick housekeeping matters, just in case you haven't joined a Sales Hacker webinar before, know that we record all of these. So if you got to jump off or want to share it out with a colleague, don't worry. As soon as we wrap up, we'll send it out your way. And number two, we like these to be, engaging. Anytime we put these on, they are for you. They're for the community. So jump on the Q&A section, right now. Let us know your name, your title, what company you work for, and ask questions throughout. We'd love to get you involved in the conversation. And we're going to be, fielding relevant questions throughout, and then we'll probably leave a little bit of time at the end for a little Q&A. But all right, that's out of the way. I wanted to introduce my two guests. I'm joined by Travis Bickham, VP of Sales and Marketing at Concord, and Alicia Simpson, Director of Demand Gen at Concord as well. Travis, Alicia, welcome to the community.
Thanks for having us. Very excited to be here, Scott. I think that, one, it's great to close out the year with you. Proud to be the last webinar of 2018. And also the topic we're going to cover today is extremely timely. Given the end of the quarter and the end of the year, we're all in crunch time. We're all trying to get those last few deals over the line, whether that's hitting our number, exceeding our number, or whatever your current situation is. This is going to be really relevant to you. So if we jump into the agenda, we can kind of talk about the game plan for the day. So,
yeah. And just super quickly there, Travis. I always like to add a little bit more color for the audience, a little bit about your bio, a little bit about your background. So before we jump in, just super quickly. So Alicia Simpson, as I said, Director of Demand Gen at Concord. We were talking earlier and do a lot more than just, fill out spreadsheets. You have a decade of actually editorial and data-driven marketing experience. And your goal is really simple. You're saying find new, better ways to achieve goals and drive results for internal teams or external organizations. And I thought it was really cool. You mentioned, so you actually lead the SDR and BDR function at Concord, is that right?
That's correct. So I sit kind of between marketing and sales in my role. So I manage the biz dev team. So it really is a unique opportunity. I get full view into the entire funnel, all the way from unaware to stage 2 opportunity.
I love that. And I'm on team marketing for who BDR should roll up to. I've been part of organizations that have both. And I think it just makes way more sense when you roll it to marketing and you have your finger kind of on the pulse at what's going on within the market. And you can relay all that information back up through the funnel to the marketing org.
Yeah,
so
and
I think that's cool.
Just as a handoff, it makes a lot of sense. So
totally. And then Travis, of course, you're responsible for global marketing and PR at Concord. Prior to that, really cool experience. You were before joining the team, you held leadership roles in tech and finance throughout Silicon Valley, and you're actually a contributor to The Economist, which I found really cool, where you wrote primarily about business, economics, and U.S. politics as well, which might be a sticky one to write about these days, but we'll leave that alone. And you're also a graduate of University of California, Berkeley, where you played years of varsity water polo, which was pretty neat. And you're actually a national champion at water polo. That's pretty cool. I like it. All right. So I just wanted to get a little bit more context for our community. But I'll pass the reins off to you now, Travis. And without further ado, let's run through the agenda, what we'll actually be covering today.
All right, let's rock and roll. So what's exciting about what we're going to talk about today is it's equally applicable whether you're selling extremely high velocity, high volume SMB deals on up through the major enterprise. I've definitely covered both in my career, and I can tell you that while the complications are different, ultimately the final impact is going to be hopefully relevant and impactful to you. So, number one, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the role of contracts, right? Contracts represent deals. And so it's really the role of deals in your organization and how to accelerate those. Two, we're going to talk about the concept of sales velocity. What is it? It's not just moving fast. There's a lot more to it than that. Three, we're going to talk about where exactly you as a sales rep, a sales ops manager, or a sales leader can have the most impact on getting that deal across the line. Hint, it's not going to be necessarily the work you do up front in the negotiation. It's actually going to come later. And then we're going to finish up with talking about building out these processes in a way that's going to actually work for you. And then wrap with hopefully some really good questions and intersperse those throughout. All right. So, are you closing deals as quickly and as efficiently as possible? I want to take kind of a counterintuitive position here and say that what I'm going to ask you to do as part of the topic today is to basically work less, do less paperwork, and try to get legal more involved in your deals. These are three things that sound like the opposite of what most of us want to do in sales, right? And if we advance to the next slide.
I don't want legal in my deals. Come on.
Well, wait till you're done with the presentation. You'll be wanting to hire more lawyers.
Okay.
And the key fundamental here that we need to start with is this fallacy that a lot of people in business have. And that's that a contract is a document. I mean, technically a contract can be a piece of paper, sure. But a contract is actually much more than that, right? A contract is a business process. And by that, I mean, when we start that process, someone has to kick it off, right? Whether that's us in sales saying, hey, I want to bring this new customer aboard, I want to process this renewal, what have you, or someone in procurement who's buying goods or recruiting, actually signing people up to work with us. That is the kickoff there. And then that has to have an outcome, right? In sales, we need to collect on that revenue. In procurement, we need to pay a vendor, or in recruiting, we need to process that paperwork. Everything that happens in the middle, that's contracting, right? That's the art of deal making, which is what we're going to talk about today. Not so much how do you originate a contract, but how do you make that go as fast as possible and have the greatest impact possible, right? And the way you do this is not necessarily different in terms of how you're approaching your customers. It's more different in how you internally handle that. So there's some technology you can use, there are some processes you can use, and there's just some kind of dark arts tips and tricks that we'll teach you that you can use.
Love it. Love it. And I think it is also relevant as well, because I know a lot of probably sales professionals that are listening to this, a lot of people don't actually get like their commission until that's all done, signed, and usually even paid. So the quicker that gets done, the quicker you get your commission check as well, which we're wrapping up at the end of the year. That's top of mind for sure.
Totally, Scott. And you'll see I'm crushing my coffee over here because we're in total deal mode too. But yeah, to your point, I mean, so many times I've seen great reps actually, get the documents, get it back, and feel like the deal is done, but it's not, right? Because we need to go through the legal process and we need to collect that revenue. And it's great to hit your number, but you haven't really hit it until the money's in the bank. So this will definitely help with that. So thinking about, what's the impact of the contract process, right? And I like to look at this through a lens of sales velocity. And the thing about velocity that a lot of people miss is it's not about speed, it's about speed plus size, right? What are you going to bring to the table for your business, for yourself, for your pipeline from the velocity standpoint? And where can contracts help? So number of deals, first off, right? How many potential customers are you bringing in? This may seem obvious, but if you're struggling to get contracts out the door, your deals are going to stagnate because you're actually not even really originating them. That's just a discussion at that point. I want to see something on paper from our reps and from myself before I'm actually thinking of that really as a true deal, right? Then there's the deal size. The harder you are to negotiate with as a salesperson, not saying that's your fault and your sales style, but your organization really, are your terms and conditions super complex? Does it take a long time to get paperwork out the door? That's going to start to drive down your average deal size because that's less people that can be involved on the other side. All of a sudden you're only able to one person and it's going to be small beans, right? And then there's your conversion rate. Thinking about that in terms of contracts, time kills deals. We all know this. The longer it takes to get that contract processed and get it in a readable way, the less deals you're going to be able to finish off. Divide all that by how much time do you have. We're talking about, the quarter, the month, and the year right now. So pick whatever your metric is. And all of this can be impacted by how we're managing contracts, right? How we're actually managing our deals from a business flow perspective. Because you can do everything right, but then if operations, finance, and legal don't have your back, you're not going to be able to hit your number. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can get them on your side and the tools you can use to make sure your velocity is as high as it can be.
Absolutely. And sorry to interrupt, you just had a really interesting point. Interesting point there with, the time it takes you to negotiate, right? Like there's some sellers out there that really, they pride themselves on their ability to negotiate and basically get the terms that they want. But I think a lot of people forget if that takes you 3 weeks, what is that time cost? Maybe the contract value is going up slightly, but that's also your time away from other deals and other high impact activities, right?
Yeah. So another point there, Scott, that a lot of people don't think about is, what do you personally have leeway on in the negotiation, right? All of us have been in enough deals where we know, hey, legal's not going to freak out if I do A, B, and C, but as soon as I hit D, I'm going to have to bring them in. So thinking about kind of those guardrails and what you can do to stay in those is going to be really helpful to avoid too many cooks in the kitchen. And it's going to allow you as the salesperson, who's probably honestly the best negotiator involved in the deal, to focus your time and energy on getting that across the line.
Absolutely. And Alicia, any thoughts from you on this? I'd love to hear your perspective.
I mean, sales velocity, to your point about timeline, and if you can add a little bit more to the ACV, but it's taking you an extra 2 weeks, we're really talking about what are you able to bring into the business every day. And if you're a sales leader, that's going to add up to the revenue that you're adding to top line, hitting your forecasting goals, all that kind of stuff. As an individual contributor, then, you're really looking at how much money are you able to put in your pocket. So it's great if you can get a slightly bigger deal, but if you can do a lot more deals faster, that's everybody overall is happier. So
absolutely. 100% agree.
All right. So jumping into kind of 3 how-tos to accelerate velocity. The first is around negotiation and collaboration. And I'm not talking about tactically how you negotiate with someone. I'm talking about where does that negotiation happen and what does it look like? I can speak from experience, and I'm sure a lot of people on this webinar would identify with, getting the whisper commit on the phone. Yeah, for sure. If you knock 10% off, we're good. I can get this across the line. But then when it comes time to put that in writing, it's a different story. And it's because your champion maybe didn't have the juice to get that across the line internally, or they went back and told their boss and they said, hey, no way, we're not going to do that, right? So what I suggest here is using technology to make that negotiation more inclusive and more transparent. So what I mean there, let's put this thing online. The way that we all use Google Docs right now in our personal lives and our work lives is a really interesting case study in terms of having everyone on the same page at the same time. And I wouldn't recommend using Google Docs to negotiate a sales agreement, right? It's not secure, it's too sensitive. But thinking about contract management, a lot of these tools out there will actually allow you to redline your contract directly online. And so if I'm negotiating with you, Scott, I can just invite you to this agreement, and then you're making your comments and you're marking that up in real time. And of course, I have to make sure you're authorized to do that. But ultimately, then I have in writing in my audit trail exactly what you want and when you wanted it. And I can bring that back to my legal team if I need to, or I can share that with my sales manager and say, no, check it out. This is exactly how this negotiation is going. You're being more collaborative and you're forcing people to put their money where their mouth is in a very positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing you can do, and this is pretty directly related, is building your own strategic relationships internally. And I'm thinking here about the people who can be deal blockers or deal accelerators, namely your general counsel, your commercial counsel, your deal desk, your sales ops team, right? Those people don't want to hold up your deal, but they do need information to do their jobs. And so if you're able to use this, online negotiation aspect, you're going to be able to show them exactly what's going on and give them the insight they need to get your deal front of the line. And guess what? If you bring that to the table, you're certainly going to get your deal processed before the guy who's got it all written on Post-it notes and is trying to convince you that this is going to happen. No, I swear on LinkedIn, I friended their VP of sales and he loves me. This is going down, right? Putting this in a way that is very concrete. And the last thing you can do specifically around negotiations using a tool like contract management is what I call the full life cycle sell. So if you're selling SaaS or you're selling something that isn't in perpetuity, you're ultimately going to have to renew that deal, especially if your quota is dependent on it or if you're benchmarked on that. And so when you're negotiating that agreement and you're getting it signed, which will allow you to e-sign as well, you're going to be able to put in information on when that deal is up, who your champion is, all the kind of stuff that traditionally just lives in Salesforce can now live at the contract level too. So now 3 months beforehand, I'm getting an email in my inbox and I'm not relying on a task in Salesforce and it's saying, hey, Travis, guess what? That great deal you negotiated with Scott, remember the one you put online and legal ran it right through? That's up for renewal. So now go ahead and resell that. And that's just one, going to make your forecasting more accurate. And two, is going to give you the transparency you need.
Mm-hmm. Tons of great points there. And to me, the second point here, that create strategic partnerships across your organization, is, in my opinion, the difference between a good rep and a great rep. Is people that have these relationships, not to use a lame sports sales reference, but you have to be the quarterback, right? And know which plays to run. Like, okay, when this size deal comes through, I know I got to get finance in right away, get legal in. On the flip side, it's also having strong relationships with marketing and the BD team and demand gen. I think that's really what takes you from a good to great rep, are those strategic great partnerships that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And a point that Alicia could probably speak to really well is deals don't originate in a vacuum, right? Usually you have an SDR or a BDR team working on that up front. And depending on your structure, they may not get comped until that closes, mm-hmm. right? They may be on more of an enterprise model. They close that deal in order for them to get paid. And so if you can, use this collaboration concept to give them insight into the negotiation, that's going to, one, have them stop coming by your desk every 5 minutes, but two, is going to allow them to understand when and how much they're going to get paid. So I don't know, Alicia, is that something you experience on your team?
Sorry, cut out a little bit there. You mean just with the amount of walking to and from offices?
I'm thinking more about, using collaboration to not just get legal on board and finance on board, but actually other members of the sales department or marketing department who are stakeholders in that deal.
Yeah, and we do a lot of account-based marketing here, which is really account-based everything because it's heavily involved with the biz dev team. So you may have one person who's working multiple leads within an account or contacts within an account, or you may happen to have like a separate inbound lead that comes in, and then you've got maybe people working different contacts that's maybe inside and outside of an account. So it's really trying to bring all the conversations together in one place. The front end, so the AE has all the information they need going forward into that deal. They know what all the qualification is, full view. But then it's, they don't have to ping back and forth between the SDR who may be qualified and then the AE who's working the deal. So the SDR is not continually following up with that AE to say, hey, what happened with the opportunity? Did it flip? Like, what's going on? Can you tell me what's happening? And the AE on the flip side is then, like you're talking about with legal, walking down to the legal office, or we all know how often emails get lost when we're selling them to or sending them to our prospects. Same thing happens internally. It's just hard to track if you can't keep everything all in one place and all online.
Agreed, for sure.
All right. So what does this actually look like, right? We're talking somewhat abstractly about getting a contract through your organization and through your customer organizations faster. So now let's kind of show you some examples of how you can apply this practically and what it would actually look like. So number one, highly suggest if you can get access to a system like this, which most mature sales organizations will have something. A lot of people start with an e-signature tool like a DocuSign, and Adobe Sign, Echo Sign, and then move towards more of this kind of negotiation capability we're talking about, and full lifecycle contract management. But one quick win are templates, right? You should not be sending a template that you've saved on your desktop over and over to customers, because that is going to get you railroaded by legal, because they update this language all the time. Think about something like GDPR. You guys have heard of that, right? Massive global regulatory change doesn't necessarily change the way we're selling in the United States, but it changes all of our contracts. And so you want to have access to the core system where legal's updating this, because one, that'll cover you. Two, that will enable you to move fast and not have to go to legal every time you need a contract, because you're operating off the latest version, right? So think of something like an NDA, right? How many NDAs do we process in a given week if we're doing high velocity sales? A lot, and you definitely don't want to go to legal for that. So get access to the templates so you can move fast. Two, auto approvals, right? It's extremely inefficient to have to send an email to 4 or 5 different internal stakeholders and ask for approval on the deal you're negotiating, or if you have to go to fallback language, or even extend something as simple as payment terms. If you're net 30 and you need to go to net 60, right? That's not something you want to have to go to legal for. And so a contract management system has something called auto approvals, where it'll basically kick that off. And then if it's within the ground rules that have been predetermined, you're good, stamp. And if it's not, someone quickly reviews that, accelerates it on. And then you, as a rep, are focused on getting your deal done, not on managing paperwork. What does this lead to? Basically decreased time to signature. And that's the online collaboration aspect we were talking about, right? I can quickly write a message, actually directly in a document like this one on the screen, and say, hey, Alicia, my general counsel, can you go ahead and take a look? It looks like you haven't hit the auto approve yet. Okay, great. Here you go, Travis. Boom. And now we're back to working on deals.
Yeah. So Travis, let's say, I'm out there, maybe I'm a startup or maybe an enterprise organization that, doesn't have, a contract management lifecycle solution on the budget. How would I go about setting this up until I can get there? Is this just, could you live link like a Google Doc? Is there a way of setting up automated approvals? What else have you seen to kind of dip people's toe in the water, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of people sort of come to this from a bridge aspect, right? You don't necessarily bite it off all at once, but you build these little bridges until you're ready for the whole platform. So templates are a great starting place. If you have a legal team that's a little more forward-looking and is comfortable with something like Google Docs, you can actually just have links to all the templates and have them update those, right? So maybe the sales team isn't able to edit directly, but legal is, and you have sort of an SLA where we promise we'll only use what's in the link, and you keep it updated so we don't have to come to you. That's a quick win for sure. I would say that getting legal a little more native in Salesforce can help a lot too. I mean, everyone, I assume, is paying for CRM for the most part. So if you can kind of dashboard out that contract process, if you have a creative sales ops person, that can get them really comfortable with a deal-oriented mindset, and then they'll start to ask for things like this. So usually a solution like we're talking about today comes off a legal budget, right? Even though sales is the primary beneficiary for it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's super helpful. Thanks for that breakdown.
Of course. All right, another key takeaway I want to hit here is it's really important to respect your own workflow. And by this, I mean, we're a webinar and we're talking about finance and legal people, right? Key stakeholders, partners, that makes sense. But at the end of the day, we as salespeople can't be changing our own workflow to the extent that it impacts our ability to hit quota. So a solution like we're talking about today, or even kind of hacking together something in Google Docs, like you mentioned, Scott, has to originate in Salesforce, Dynamics, whatever your CRM is. So one of the first questions you should ask if you hear of a project like this on the horizon is, well, yeah, it sounds great, but can I keep working from Salesforce? And if you look at the screenshots here, you can basically see, what happens if you were to create a contract directly in Salesforce. You literally are just hitting a button from the opportunity field, and that'll auto flow into your contract. And so you as a sales rep are worried about the same stuff you've always been worried about. You don't have to learn a new system, and you don't have to teach other people what's going on, right? And so respecting your own workflow, but allowing others to augment that is really key to success here.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to really talk about at a high level is what's the benefit to your company of working with more of a contract mindset and less of a paper document signature mindset. And this is if you're an executive, if you're in sales ops, if you're in finance, what is the one thing you're always worried about? It's forecasting. It's how can the company make its number, right? As reps, everyone worries about how to make my own number. Very important. But when you roll all that together, those are the questions the board is asking, the investors are asking, and these people need to be able to answer it. So one thing that I see that's really, really valuable is as you start to use tools like online collaboration and you start to share that within your organization, you're basically adding mini stages to your final sales process closing stage. So instead of saying, and I don't know what everyone's internal processes are, this is a stage 5 agreement to purchase. We're about to move forward to close 1. You can start to break down that agreement to purchase phase into this has been shared with the client. The client has started redlining. We're redlining internally. And you can see all that in real time. And you'll know typically it takes 2 days for red lines. You got to fly? Typically it takes...
Got it in midair. I got him with a pretty lace one. Yeah, good. Sorry.
Yeah, nice. That was quick. But the overall point is it's going to make your forecasting that much more accurate. So forecasting for your own pipeline, what you can commit on to your manager, what your manager can commit on to their director, and so on and so forth. Operating from the contract level is a beautiful single source of truth that we don't get in the amount field in Salesforce, right? Ideally, they'd be the same, but we all know it's not. And so the more we can push people into the contracts, the more they'll be sympathetic to helping us close deals, and the more accurate their internal forecasting is going to be, and the better the business is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. Awesome.
Alicia, do you have anything you want to add on to that?
And I think you're on mute there, Alicia.
I was on mute. Sorry. So everything we've talked about here, it's, we've talked about technology, and if we think a few decades ago now with Salesforce and CRMs coming onto the scene, mm-hmm. we're always looking for ways to streamline the sales process, streamline your workflow, empower your teams to basically do more faster, and as a individual seller, to just get your deals closed faster. So contracts are really like that last piece. So if we're talking about like the number one takeaway here, it's start leveraging your contracts, your contract processes to get more work done faster. So it's just taking it to the next level past the CRM. So
yeah, there's so much here too, and I think those takeaways were awesome. But I think you could talk so many different ways of the benefits of setting up a structure like this. Like even for me as a seller, if I'm going to go into an organization and they have a process that is streamlined for the contract, like the dreaded contract phase, which is like obviously not a lot of sales folks like dealing with that end, and company A has a perfect process that I don't have to worry about, and I know how to set it up, versus company B who's trying to poach me over here and they don't have that set up. I know which company I'm going for, right? It must help you guys with even retention of salespeople and hiring. I could see that as a big benefit as well.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you choose company A who's got the systems in place, they're helping you meet quota faster, close more deals faster. They're helping you do your job.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas company B, you're going to have to work a little harder. And yeah, maybe you've done it that way for a long time, but that doesn't mean that there's no reason to change it and do it a little better or do it a little faster.
Yeah. And so we've got a quick question here from Christopher Krell. Thank you so much for the question, Christopher. So Christopher just wants a clarification around, what is the number one secret that we're talking about? Is this, so the number one secret then being, simplifying the contract process is the one that's often overlooked. Just to reiterate, is that right, Travis, Alicia? Or am I putting words in your mouth?
Yeah, at a high level, for sure.
Yeah,
I would say at a high level, simplification definitely is the theme here. But ultimately, the number one secret to this is get buy-in beforehand at a high level. And so get those templates approved, get those approval workflows approved, have that conversation one time, and then you never have to have it again. And then you're able to just focus on closing those deals. And you're, one, going to close more business, but two, everyone else is going to love you because you don't bother them and you're always within the compliance rules. So have the conversation either as a team or as a sales leader or even an individual and figure out what do we need to get this deal done, and then agree those are the rules of the road, respect them, and if you can, automate them, and you'll be off to the races.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
We talked about what you can do if you don't have, we were mentioning like keeping a Google Doc with all the links of contracts and then having legal update that. Everybody's got a sales playbook, and you can do that in Drive. So you can create a playbook that's basically, even by contract type or whatnot, you can have a written down approval of where this should go so that you can set that up as a rep. You walk in, you get the playbook, and you're like, okay, these are the contracts I need. This is who needs approval for this type of document. That's even going to cut down time. So you're not just searching or trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and even in a doc like that, you could set up these kind of auto approvals, even if they're not automated approvals, but you could, break it down exactly, here's how low we go in this scenario. Here's, what
it's
we
like rules of engagement.
Exactly.
It's a decision tree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. Another great question here from Yar Melmed. Yar, thank you so much for the question. And this is seemingly around kind of partnership ecosystems and deals. How would you recommend speeding up deals when working with partners who are driving the deal with the customer?
Yeah, great question. So at a high level outside of the discussion today, I think it's about mutually aligning incentives, right? What is, their end of quarter? Are we on the same one? Are they different, right? Who are their internal stakeholders? And so the same way you map a buyer organization and you get on a whiteboard and you figure out who you have to influence to get this deal done, do the same thing with your partners, right? Their incentives are not always the exact same as ours, but we can work to make them that way. And we can figure out what are the triggers that will get them to take action, right? So that's a high level. How that relates specifically to contract management is make things as transparent as possible, right? If you can get them to collaborate online and negotiate online, and you have access to that document, you know exactly what's going on, and you can influence them. You can pick up the phone and say, hey, Joe, I see you've been sitting on this for 3 days. What gives? What's going on? What can I help with? And that transparency will naturally make things move faster. And if you can get the auto approvals going too, you're going to just move that deal along, right? And ultimately, it'll give more clarity over how much money is on the line. So more clarity, more collaboration, and aligning incentives.
Yeah, those are all great points. Aligned incentives, transparency, and then just overall clarity and simplicity, I think, is where you're getting at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yarmelma just said, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Awesome. So if there's any more questions, feel free to jump in here. But as we kind of wrap up, Travis and Alicia, how does Concord help sales and marketing professionals today, for those who maybe haven't put it together quite yet?
Sure. So at a high level, what Concord does is it digitizes this manual process in the middle of all companies. So if you're in sales, that usually means the sales process, but it can mean really any process. So from the moment you kick off a contract till the moment your company has to go to court and, defend a lawsuit. God forbid that ever happens. All of that information is stored in one central platform. So the way we use Salesforce to organize our sales information, this is the way we use Concur to organize our contracts information. So the three main benefits that we give people are really increased revenue, reduce cost, and guaranteed compliance. So beloved by legal teams, sales teams, and procurement teams, and also have small.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Well, Alicia, Travis, thank you so much for joining me today. That was a really enjoyable discussion. And I hope you both have an awesome holidays. And thank you, everyone in the community who hung out with us today.